Today, we're going to cook Biang Biang noodles. So Biang Biang noodles are Chinese noodles. I think it literally translates to hand-torn or hand-ripped. You know when you see the guys in Chinatown like making the noodles and sort of spinning them around and getting the twirly. It's not quite as complicated as that, but it is pretty impressive, and it's super delicious, and it's super easy. Why wouldn't you make it? Let's go. Start off with, because we're making the dough from scratch, get a mixing bowl and a bit of flour. I've just got regular bread flour. Obviously don't use self-raising. But yeah, we're just going to eyeball everything measurement-wise too, because it's very forgiving, which is nice. Bit of salt. Bit of salt over the shoulder for luck, right? And next you want to come in with your water. Again, because we're just eyeballing everything, add as much as you need, and you'll feel it as you're working with the dough. Like if it needs a bit more flour, add a bit more flour. But we're going to just knead all that together for about 10 or so minutes, or until we get the consistency that we want. Just work away at it, bit of elbow grease. You can see I needed a bit more water, so I added a bit more water. Nice and simple, don't even stress it. So just folding everything in together on itself. You know, I worked in 3 different pizza shops in my life. Finally, something useful. This one's a handy trick. So you kind of want to make a claw with your hands, and then you keep that steady as you roll the ball clockwise, and it just makes a perfect little dough circle. Once all that's done, pop him back in the mixing bowl with a bit of sesame oil, just on top. Stop it all getting a bit crusty and funky. And then we're just gonna cover him in a tea towel and put him aside, let him rest. Happy days. Now I've no doubt there's a great system for measuring the dough exactly and getting perfectly even pieces, but we don't do that here. We're very rough and ready. So, we're going to cut the dough into workable chunks, and you'll soon find out what is a good size for you. If it's too small, you'll realize it's unworkable. If it's too big, it'll be cumbersome. Just figure out what is good for your hands. So what we're going to do is stretch it out, and you'll see we're banging it on the bench as we do it. So you kind of want to pull and slap it down at the same time, because that's just going to even out the texture, I guess, is the best way to put it, of the noodle. It's kind of like when you're frying something in a pan and you sort of shake it and you bang it on the stove to even out all the ingredients. It's the same sort of principle with the noodles. Like as you're slapping them, the thickness of the noodle will evenly distribute as you slap and pull. So now we're going to come through and rip a small hole in the middle of the noodle. Be careful, don't go all the way through, because we want to keep it in one big, I guess a hoop, like a loop, a big circle of dough. And we just go through and tease all that out again, because there'll still be thick bits. So just go around until it's uniform, and it will get bigger and bigger and bigger until finally snaps. And there you go, you've got your noodles. So they're a bit rough and raw and textured, but that's kind of half the beauty of them. They're not all going to be exactly the same. And that's it, just repeat the process. Roll it out, stretch it out, rip the hole, tease out the edges, and keep lining up your noodles. So just gently stretching as you work the loop through your fingers. And then, once you are happy with them and they're all nice and even, that's it, noodles done. So we want to bring some water up to the boil, chuck a bit of salt in there, lowers the boiling temperature, gets everything going quicker, and then bung in your noodles. It's going to depend, it's going to vary depending on the thickness of them and the amount you got, how long it'll take to cook, so just keep an eye on it, make sure nothing's sticking to the bottom. Next, we want to get our veg. I've just got a bit of leftover wombok here, but you can use anything, really. Any veg you've got left over. And that's another one of the beautiful things about this recipe, is you can use like whatever you got left over. Like I had a bit of cabbage, but if you got broccoli, if you got bok choy, gailan, like any veg, just chop it up, chuck it in the water. Give everything a good old mix, and then once the noodles and the veggies are cooked, we're just going to drain it all off, chuck in a bit of sesame oil so it doesn't stick together, and just let it sit aside for now. So here's where it gets interesting. We're going to come in with a few spices that probably don't sound like they should work, but trust me, they work perfectly. We come in with our aromatics. So we've got our garlic, chop it up fresh if you want. Minced garlic is just as good. Same with the ginger, have it fresh if you have it on hand, otherwise this stuff in the packet is great. Put all that into a pan with a bit of oil. I've got a mix of canola and sesame oil, just for flavor. And you want a little bit more oil than you think you should have, because that's going to make for the sauce of the noodles. Here's the fun bit. So straight away come in with some cayenne pepper. The hotter the better. If you get a milder one, you can also add some dried chili flakes. Sprinkle a bit of that in, then some cumin. Again, put a little bit more than you think you should. I know it's going to seem strange, like, you know, these are spices to make a curry, not noodles, but trust me. Turmeric as well. Anything really in this sort of family, this flavor profile that you've got in the cupboard will work. Round it off with a bit more sesame oil, I just needed a bit more. But any of these sort of herbs, like I've got leftover coriander seeds, for example, chuck them in too, you know. Again, it's a very forgiving recipe. It uses up all the little leftover bits you've got in a great way. White pepper, always essential for Asian cuisine. And then just stir all that through and just make sure the garlic doesn't burn and everything's cooked off. Green onion, shallot, scallion, I don't care where you are in the world, chop it up. And now the fun bit, put it all together. So get the noodles and the veg, chuck that in a bowl, and then we're going to get that scorchingly hot oil with all the beautiful garlic and the spices. Mix that in with the noodles as well. You could at this point, if you want, add a bit of soy sauce or a bit of oyster sauce, anything like that. Throw in a bit of like chicken, leftover cooked chook, just shred that through. If you want to put some meat in there, make it a full like dinner meal, or you can just keep it vegetarian. But stir it all through, guys. Add those shallots, scallions, green onions, whatever you call them. You could also add some coriander or some cilantro if you got that lying around. But just mix it all together until everything's coated and delicious. Then serve it up, and Bob's your mother's brother. Too easy. And that is it. Biang Biang noodles, done. We used the leftover veggies in the cupboard, last little bits of the spices we had left, bit of flour, water, dead easy to make and super delicious, I promise you. Give it a whack, guys. You'll absolutely love it. Enjoy. I'm out. Later.